This is Luke Hancock of Been There, Done That, and I'm here with Beth Blacker. Beth Blacker is you're the founder and owner of It's Just Stuff, the decluttering and professional organizer in the front. Well, you refer to it as the Front Range of Colorado in the Boulder, right, Longmont area. Is that correct?
Yeah, we cover the Front Ranges from Fort Collins all the way down to Pueblo. We don't go as far as Pueblo, but we do have a team of people in Colorado Springs.
Oh, great. So you have a team, and we'll get into that, who you are and who you help. First, I just wanted to, introduce you to our audience, and you actually are customers of ours. One of our very first locations in the United States, our franchise location in Boulder. And if you want to start by letting our viewers or listeners, whatever may call them, who you are and more about your company and your relationship with Been There, Done That.
Sure. So we are a home organizing and move management service. While we can do what people typically think of as the basic home organizing, kitchens, pantries, closets, things like that, really where we have shined and really gotten a lot of recognition and credibility through the years in this community is helping those people that are really struggling with too much stuff. And, by too much stuff, we're talking oftentimes dumpsters coming back 2 or 3 times a day, not just 2 or 3 times a week. It's very sad in our country, and I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in the United States, people really do collect a lot of things, and they put a lot of emotional attachment on those things. And at the end of their life, where do those things end up? In a dumpster a lot of times. And it's heartbreaking to see that happen. And it's not always at the end of somebody's life. It's sometimes at the end of, some sort of trauma or tragedy that's taken place. Or sometimes it's in the case when I first was introduced to Been There, Done That, it was the case of a woman who was married to somebody for over 20 years. And she gave him an ultimatum that this was it. This was his last chance. They were going to do the big, deep, clean out. And it was a hoarder situation, no doubt about it. The husband would deny that. But he, after the first day, he didn't get involved at all. The wife said, I'll take care of it. I'm not asking you to be involved. Go away even. He went away for 4 or 5 days so that, we could do the work that we needed to do. But those first couple of days, he was around and he went dumpster diving in the middle of the night. Wow. And for us, it sounds like, it would make good comedy for a TV show or a movie, but right. it represents so much trauma and tragedy and emotion for a lot of people. He was looking for a light bulb. That's all he was looking for, was some sort of special light bulb that he had bought at Home Depot. It got buried in the garage under, and when I started that job, when I walked into the garage, I'm 5'3", everything, like, the floor was covered up to my hip.
Right, towering over you.
Yeah. But the whole house was like that. And the project ultimately took about a month for us to do the entire house. But, between the garage and their basement, I think we probably called you guys or the local franchise here. Mm-hmm. I think in that first initial push, there was a dumpster coming every day. Wow. That needed to be replaced. Yeah. And it was whatever the largest size dumpster was. And we were in there packing it down, trying to get in as much as we possibly could. But yeah.
That's 20 cubic yards, Beth. So that's a lot to fill.
I'm not good at math, but I am good at geometry and space. Right. And I know what it was. I know exactly what it was. We stopped counting at over 300 screwdrivers in the garage alone.
Oh. Yeah. So Beth, let's transition into you personally, because it sounds like you're really motivated to help people. And what's your history in this industry, in this space? Does it go back a long time, or are you fairly new to the industry? Or?
No, I actually, I say in my biography on my website that I think I was just born with this weird gene, weird DNA that liked to have order and a place for everything. My mother never had to tell me to clean up my room, make my bed, put my clothes away, anything like that. What I didn't realize was it was really, really, really important to me to have order and routine in my life, even as a young kid. I mean, it was really important. And I think that back then it probably would have been considered a little obsessive compulsive disorder. But really what it was just trying to, create systems so that I could continue to be as productive as possible each and every day. What I
Right.
really didn't realize was that was truly a sign that I had ADD, ADHD. And I don't think that anybody when I was a kid would have ever have thought that I would be diagnosed as an adult with ADHD. But I have what's called hyperfocus ADHD. So I go into something and I can't necessarily break my focus away from it. There's a big misconception about ADHD. It's not the inability to focus at all. It's just the inability to regulate your focus. So for me, I can sit down and just dive into a project and not lose, but get involved in it for 12, 14 hours. It was great when I had to write a term paper in
Yeah,
college,
no doubt.
right? But it's really not a great thing long term. So I was just constantly coming up with these coping mechanisms. And over the course of many years and into my adult years, people started asking me to help them organize their spaces because they saw how well I maintained mine. Still not diagnosed with ADHD, but nevertheless, like really hyper focused. And, what I love doing is walking into a space like the house that I was describing before when I first was introduced to Been There, Done That. Being able to go in and find that low hanging fruit, that corner where you can just start peeling back the
Right.
layers, right? And really seeing what is there, because a lot of times people just don't know what's there. They can't see what they can't see. And so my job is to create the clearing, obviously, and more importantly, set them up for success moving forward. There's no judgment involved in what we do because we work with a lot of people who are either on the spectrum, mentally, have some sort of mental health disorder, physical limitation, whatever it may be. So it's really important to us that when we come in, we're able to really feel as though the client is engaged because this is their journey, not ours. Um,
Right.
I met somebody a couple months ago who told me that he runs a trekking company in Nepal. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. I would love to do that one day. And when he asked me what I did, I said, I'm kind of a Sherpa. And he looked at me like, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm the guide that goes up the proverbial mountain with our clients, but it's their journey, not mine to take. And however they choose to take the journey, I'm just there with the open eyes, open ears, open hands, open hearts, open minds, right? Like I say that all
Right.
the time. And that's really sometimes what people need.
So it's more than just what's physically in the home at the time that you're helping. It goes beyond that. Once that clutter is removed from the home and
Yeah.
put into, say, a dumpster, like
Yeah.
one of ours, right?
Yeah.
That's really sounds like where the journey starts, right?
Yeah.
So it's this journey of like creating this new lifestyle. You can call it minimalism. I don't know if you have to go to that extreme, but just
No.
a different lifestyle, right?
Right. And, I akin it to kind of, Weight Watchers being a life maintenance
Yeah.
diet. It's not a fad. It's not a quick fix. It is a lifelong process that, some people have the capacity to develop these good habits and others may never be able to do it. And again, no judgment, no disparagement. I say all the time, I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning wanting to have these, executive functioning issues or chronic disorganization, hoarding, mental health issues. I don't think that anybody wants to wake up being mentally ill and not being able to be productive and manage their life any more than somebody wants to wake up with cancer or heart disease or diabetes.
Right.
Treat people in our societies like they're horrible and they're worthless, and why do we want to help them when they just can't function on a day-to-day basis? And I'm just going to say that's a horrible mindset for our world to have. The World Health Organization recognizes hoarding as a mental health disorder, but
Sure.
in our country, in the United States, I mean, the stigma is there, and it's bad. It's a really bad stigma. So, I have great compassion for anybody struggling on any level. And sometimes it's not even a mental health disorder. It may just be PTSD or a trauma that they went through, whether, we've had clients that have been abused as children, abused as adults, went through, a terrible financial crisis, or, some sort of health crisis that left them, incapable of working or not having any money to fully support themselves. So a lot of times I have to make a decision whether or not I want to help people pro bono. And as much as I want to, and I do a lot, really what I believe in at least in our country, this type of service for the people that really desperately need it should be covered by insurance. I really, really, really cannot stress that enough. But
Right.
unfortunately, I'm not licensed by the state. There's no certification that's required for what I do, but I often have to take on the role of a caseworker, social worker. I work with a lot of seniors who are downsizing and transitioning to assisted living. And here in the United States, the assisted living, like making those transitions, it's not easy, especially if you don't have family or friends to help you. And the number of times that I get calls from seniors crying hysterically, and rightfully so, that they're being, kicked out of wherever they are because they need more help, but nobody's there to really navigate it for them. So I'm not a case manager. I'm not a senior care professional. I'm just somebody with, I think a big heart and a lot of compassion. And so I'm lucky that I am somebody who also likes to go out into the community and connect with all the resources that are out there so that I can make sure my clients are getting the best resources possible where I can't help them. And then somebody else can step in. So it's not just about decluttering. There's a lot of psychology, a lot of emotional work that's involved, and, a lot of, referrals that have to take place when I can't do it like especially if it's a biohazard situation, we won't walk into that. We just can't. We won't. But there are companies that will do it, and I'm happy to work
Sure.
with them.
Yeah, and we're familiar with some of those companies. You mentioned insurance. What do you think it would take for insurance providers to provide that type of service? Do you foresee it ever happening? Or
I mean, I've been called a socialist, and I'm okay with
hmm,
that. I think we need to be thinking more in terms of, more of a socialistic mindset. I'm not saying we need to become a true socialistic society, but I think that if people need help, we should be helping them. There shouldn't be constantly, you know, and we could say that about so many things in our
sure
country.
you can.
You
Yeah.
know, it's healthcare, it's education, it's basic needs. Nobody should be on the streets in our country, but here we are with millions of
Mhm.
people on the street, including elderly people. I had a 90-year-old client who was being kicked out of assisted living because her husband had to be moved up to skilled nursing, and he was the one with the Medicaid benefits, so that's how they were able to afford to be in the community that they were in. But once they moved him out because they claimed she was abusing him, and I need to tell you why they thought that she was abusing. He fell out of bed one night, and she called down for help to get him back into bed. It took them 5 hours. So when they finally got him back into bed, she decided to put chairs up against the bed as a guardrail so he wouldn't fall out again. And it seemed like the right thing to do. I mean, why not, right? And then the social worker came back hours later to check on them, and she saw what the woman had done, the wife had done, and said that she was reporting her to Adult Protective Services
Mm.
because, as far as she was concerned, she was imprisoning her husband in bed. That's not what she was doing. She
No.
was trying to keep her husband safe because she knew that the community she was in didn't respond in fast enough. And this is assisted living. It wasn't even independent living. And now she's separated from her husband when, she didn't need to be. And she had to move down to an independent living community that has zero amenities, no van service, no meals service, no maintenance service. Why they call it independent living, I don't know. But these are the kinds of things that I get involved in.
Sure.
Because I'm not just cleaning out somebody's closet. I promise.
Right.
It's a lot more than that. And I'm willing to take on that advocacy type of role, but it takes money to be able to do that. And I'm that's where I'm working towards, is I have this great team of people that I know I can send out to do all of these jobs, but I want to be working more on the advocacy and business development side to have more of those grants and funds available to help the clients that really desperately need it.
Okay, so some of the customers, it sounds like you have customers on all sides of the spectrum here, right? That the ones that have these real serious conditions.
Yeah.
But I'm sure some of your customers are just maybe, they have a lot of kids and they've collected a lot of stuff over the years. But it's not as easy as just, I'm going to wake up on a Saturday morning and declutter, right?
Right.
Walk me through some of the common mistakes people make when they're trying to declutter their homes, and really the best ways of avoiding those mistakes.
I think they try and take on too much too soon. I think a lot of people need to. There's this technique called the Pomodoro technique that a lot of people with ADHD use to help them keep their focus in proper chunks of time. Again, I'm somebody who can sit for 12 hours. Not that I'm saying that that's a good thing, but the idea behind this is, you do something in a 20-minute chunk, take a 5-minute break, then do another 20-minute chunk, take a 10-minute break, then do another 20-minute chunk, and it just keeps going like that, so that you're not taxing your body and your brain to the point of exhaustion, and then you give up, because that's usually what happens, is people try and take on too much too quickly, and they just can't do it all in one day. The other thing that I see a lot of people do is, with social media, obviously they follow influencers, and I'm not saying that all home organizing influencers are doing a disservice, but I think that in general, they're creating this feeling of perfect, like we have to do this just this way, and not everybody needs like that picture perfect house, beautiful architectural digest home. It has to function more than worry. We talk about function versus form. It needs to function for them, and whatever that looks like for them, that's for them to decide. Again, this is their journey. What works for me may not work for you or anybody else. So, I offer all the different ideas for clients to implement, or we implement it, and then they maintain and contain it. But if they can't, then they can't. And then we just keep coming back and helping them maintain it on a regular basis. And again, no judgment. I hire an accountant every year to do my taxes. I use this analogy all the time, because
that's a great analogy.
right,
Yeah.
they are the professional. And I say it in every single interview, because I cannot stress it enough. We are all have our own superpowers, right? Like, this is my superpower, but I don't expect anybody else to have it. And nobody should expect me to have the superpower of being able to do my taxes. I don't even, can I clean the space that I live in? Sure, I can, but do I want to? Not really. No. And does that make me sound entitled? I hope not, because I work really, really hard in order to play really hard. I live in this beautiful place, and I want to be able to take advantage of it. So if I work, 6 or 7 days straight, which is sometimes what happens, and I want to take off a day and not be cleaning, I'm going to pay somebody money to clean my place, because they're better at it. They can do it faster. And I want to still have quality of life. And that I think is something that, at least in our country, we really suck at, because we like to put people down instead of raise them up. And so having somebody do my taxes should raise me up. It shouldn't make me feel inferior. It should make me feel like, yay, I did this. I got it done. Yeah, I paid somebody to do it, but that's okay. It's okay. But we still like to disparage people if we think that it's something that's I'll never be able to change a tire on my car, nor do I want to. But how many times have I been stuck on the side of a mountain road, having to call emergency roadside service? And then, people say to me, you really need to learn to change a tire. I'm like, maybe.
Or just carry your CAA card or a AAA card, I guess you would have.
It scares me. I'm afraid that I'm going to get hurt, and I don't care if somebody can teach me how to do it. I mean, I know how to use a power screwdriver and a drill. I'm pretty good with that.
Right.
But that's about as handy as I get. So, if I can, convey one really important message to anybody that might be listening to this, don't beat yourself up over something that you cannot do for yourself. It's just, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And this just happens to be an incredible strength of mine.
Nice. We had touched on, one of your, I guess, more significant segment of customers, and that's, individuals or couples going through significant life transitions as they may they need to downsize, right? So I'm sure you get a lot of downsizing clients. What's your number one tip for making the process less overwhelming?
Again, doing it in small chunks and not waiting, not procrastinating. One of the things I really stress with my senior clients, because I do a lot of presentations, and I say this over and over again to them, if you know that you're planning on moving in the next year, start today with the first drawer. And just put it on your calendar, a couple of times a week, do one drawer, one cabinet, one closet at a time. And eventually your whole house will be done. But if you get to the point where it's like, oh, I don't know what to do here, then yeah, by all means, call in a service like mine. But if you can take it apart in small little chunks and try not to think about, well, someday I may still use this again, that someday probably will never come.
It never comes. You're right. You're right. That's right.
I don't care what anybody says. I mean, sadly, the number of clients that we have had that have died before someday came, where they were able to spend the time to go through their, memories and possessions and things like that. There are so many cool ways to preserve memories these days that don't require you to keep a storage unit filled with crayon drawings from, your grandchildren from when they were 1. There's just no reason to do that anymore. But people still do it. And that's where they get, really stuck, because they just sit there with these memories in their hand and think, how do I just throw these away? You don't have to. There are ways we can, preserve the memories, lots of digital ways, lots of, little books, memory books, pillows, blankets, collages. My kids' artwork from the time they were in a private school from pre-K all the way through 8th grade, and they had a fall and a spring fine arts night. So it was 2 times a year, and the art instructors at the school picked the art project that they thought best represented what they did during that particular semester. And so when my kids would bring home that artwork, it usually got framed and put on a wall in our guest room. And, until I moved out of that house, I had them on the wall. And when I got divorced and moved out here, I realized there was no way I could take up that much space in one room. I took all of the artwork, had it digitized, put it in a collage, had that collage printed out, and now I have 36 by 48 posters. And for a long time, they were in a room that like one of the rooms wherever I lived. And then I didn't have room in one of the places, and they ended up in my garage. And I could see them every time I pulled into my garage, and it made me happy. So even if it's not inside your house, if you can still see it, why not?
Right.
Put it in the garage. Why not?
That's a really cool idea. And you kind of led me to another idea I had in my head is I certainly wouldn't consider myself on the severe end of the spectrum or anything, but we have all our kids. We have two daughters, and we have all our kids' artwork from.
Yep.
One's in the 5th grade now, one's in the 3rd grade, but we have all their artwork.
Right.
You said something like maybe something functional, like add those artworks to a blanket or something that could be functional rather than just collect in the house. And yeah, so you just maybe have to be a little quick on your feet or think out of the box.
But on your feet, I think you have to just be more intentional and deliberate.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, when my kids were in soccer, the number of trophies and medals.
Oh, yeah. And we're facing that now with one in dancing. Yeah.
Right. So what I decided, I asked my kids when they were both, moving out and going to college, I'm like, what do you want to do with these? And they're like, oh, we don't care. I'm like, all right, you know what? We're taking a picture. We're going to put them on the floor. You're going to sit down on the floor. We'll take one picture with all of them. And then they're going in the trash. I mean, what was I supposed to do with them? Honestly, like I'm not keeping a trophy room for the rest of my life.
Right.
Yeah. And
and the picture, I mean, especially with I just think of iPhones now, they collage it for you with those My Memory videos. So that could easily show up in one of those pictures. Yeah, that's a great
whatever
point.
My kids decide to do with those memories, that's on them now.
Yeah.
I was the family historian for when my mother and my grandmother died. When my daughter was before she turned 1 even. So my mom became the family historian archivist of all my grandmother's stuff. And she never really did. And my mom was pretty organized, and it was organized in the basement, but she never did anything with it, like actually, for preservation purposes. And when she died, my sister and I are like, we don't even know most of the people in these photos. Like, we don't know their names. We never met them. They were dead before we were born. But my grandmother was very superstitious, and we weren't supposed to throw away pictures. But we made a decision. We were going to throw away pictures. We couldn't carry these forward in our life. And it didn't even make sense for us to scan them because, again, we didn't know who the people were. We really didn't. And if my grandmother was pretty good about writing on the back of photos. So if it said Grandma Young or Grandma Kassoff or, whoever the relative was, great. We might have scanned it. But if it was like, I don't know, I'm going to Abe and Ethel, 1932. I don't know who Abe and Ethel are.
And to your point, you can digitize all that now.
Yeah.
Which leads me to ask you. So I know, or from what I know, you're an advocate for donating and recycling during the decluttering process.
Yeah.
Can you share some tips on how consumers can declutter in a more eco-friendly way?
Well, we're lucky here in the Boulder area that we have a tremendous program for recycling and upcycling and repurposing hard to recycle hazardous waste. So, I have places that I can immediately drop things off pretty easily. It's gotten harder to drop things off since the pandemic. A lot of donation centers won't take pillows, blankets, sheets, towels, anything like that. So a lot of that kind of stuff goes to the Humane Society. Habitat for Humanity is in a lot of communities around the North America. And if you don't have something like what we have here called Resource, which is a way for us to drop off building supplies and things like that, I would contact Habitat for Humanity for sure.
Yeah, and I worked for Habitat for Humanity, a previous job, and they're a great organization, and their restore will actually come to you if you have a couch or some other tools or something that you want to donate. They'll physically come to you. You don't always have to drop off to them.
Right.
So that's one of the perks to donating to Habitat.
And I would say, if you are somebody that's trying to do the decluttering on your own, reach out to a couple of the organizers in your area and just say, hey, I've got all these items. Do you know the best place to take them? Because we do. We know the best places to take things. We really, really do. There are some places that we don't take things to. There are some nationwide and international nonprofits that I refuse to take things to because I know that they're truly not helping as much as they claim to be helping. A lot of times our American garbage for a long time was ending up in China and China won't take it anymore. And then it started getting shipped to third world countries and being sold for pennies on the pound there. And what happens in those cases is we're destroying their local fair trade markets, right? Like we're bringing, all those dumb t-shirts from, parties and family reunions to, these little villages where, they're just trying to make a living in their little community. And why are we bringing in all this crap that, they really truly don't need? So do your research if you care. I mean, some people don't care, and that's fine. It's not, again, for me to judge, but I care. And I want to make sure that I try and get things to the people that have the most immediate and desperate need in our community at any given point in time. And that could be, homeless. We had a big fire here a couple of years ago, the Marshall Fire. There were 1,100 homes lost. So, I was immediately, and I had smoke damage, but I didn't have any property damage. So I immediately jumped into, all of the pop-up events that were taking place to try and bring things to people from my very generous clients who really wanted to help the situation because, yeah, sure, it happened in a community that's considered affluent, but when your house completely goes up in flames and you have nothing, you're starting from scratch. You need pillows, you need sheets, you need towels, you need clothes, you need hats and shoes, you need everything.
Yeah.
And our community did a really good job at helping the people that really needed it in that immediate and desperate time. So I'm always looking for those, unfortunate situations. There's a lot of news going on right now with the Venezuelan refugee situation here in Denver. But I still believe that there are people that really need stuff, and I'm not going to let the bad people who have come in and made it look like all the refugees are criminals, which we know they're not.
Right.
I don't want to feel like they're going to now be ignored and not helped. So yeah, and I'm part of a group of organizers in the Denver Boulder area, and we all are extremely passionate about this. It's not part of an actual organization, a formal organization like the NAPO or anything like that.
Napalm, right.
We are just a group of very concerned citizens who happen to be professional organizers that want to help people as much as possible.
You can help a lot of people, and I would suggest you don't have to look too far. So maybe that should, when people are starting this process, that should be right at the forefront. How their stuff can impact the lives of others.
Yeah, there's just no end to needs. And, I would like to think, I grew up, I'm a very upper middle class privileged white girl in the suburbs of Detroit. My parents made sure there was always food on the table, clothes on our back, a roof over our head. I had, a car that was at my disposal by the time I was 16. My college education was paid for, but I never took any of it for granted. And I never allowed my entitled status to prevent me from helping others. I was just raised to believe that, we are here to help one another and raise each other up. And I don't know how to be any different. I just don't. And I'd like to believe that if I ever need help, that people will help me. And they have. I mean, I've gone through some times in my life, usually surrounding, I was married and divorced twice. And, I left my second marriage in debt, and that was not fun for me because I had never been in debt in my life, but, it was what it was. And so there were people that offered places for me to stay temporarily that, it was incredibly generous because it got me back on my feet. And so why wouldn't I want to continue to pay it forward every way that I can?
Right. And sounds like this career, is not just a career, but it's a passion of yours and
Yes.
an opportunity to pay it forward.
Yeah.
Getting back to the actual decluttering process, do you find, for areas in the home that are typically attracted to clutter, basements, garage, do you tackle those areas in the house a little different than, say, the entire house or other parts of the
I
house?
I think the process is generally the same, regardless of the space. We want to come in, we want to, we talked about finding that low hanging fruit from the beginning, because that is what is going to mentally set somebody up for success immediately, because they're going to start to see that immediate traction happening, and a little bit of a clearing happening. So they get their endorphins pumped up, and feel like, oh my
Yeah,
God, this is great. This is great. I see the difference. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than just peeling back that first layer. But sorry, I've got the hiccups.
that's okay. Yeah,
We always want to go through a sorting process. So it's really important, because a lot of times clients don't know what they really have until they see it in those piles by category. Like the guy that I said had over 300 screwdrivers, that we stopped
right.
counting at 300. He may have known that there were a lot of screwdrivers. I don't think he knew how many screwdrivers until he physically saw them in a large box. And yet, he felt as though because he couldn't find them, he went on and bought a whole new set every time he went to Home Depot. And that's the biggest problem for people, is that if they can't find it, if they can't see it right away, they're going to go out and repurchase it. And what a waste of money, right?
Guilty as charged. Yeah, I
Right,
am guilty of that. I'm trying to get better, but
right,
and sometimes it's not, that you can't find it. It's just sometimes it's just easier to go and buy that box of screws that's $10 and try to look further your house. So I can
right,
certainly
right.
admit guilt there.
Right. And it may not matter for one $10 box of screws, but multiply that by hundreds of items
Right.
over the course
Yeah.
of many years, and it adds up to a lot of money. I mean, the amount of food that we throw out on a regular
Oh,
basis, it is unbelievable to me. And some people, they don't believe in expiration dates. Okay, that's their choice. But if you're not going to have that stock rotation system set up, you're going to constantly be throwing food out. So
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
food waste is certainly always on my radar, and probably we could dive another hour into that. But
Right.
we're going to wind down here, and hate to bring up COVID, but you know, for our business, Been There, Done That, we certainly saw an uptick in people decluttering post pandemic, and obviously that how much that probably reflected on your business. But have you noticed any trends in what people are looking to get rid of or organize since then?
um we can always tell when we're walking into a house that did a lot of pandemic hoarding. There's
Yeah,
oftentimes still, hundreds of rolls of toilet paper and paper towel, a lot of, ready to eat kind of meal packages.
yeah,
There is, that prepper mindset that a lot of people do have, that they're afraid of, an apocalypse, and, Armageddon, our food supply chain completely falling apart. I'm going to argue, I don't want anybody to starve, but at the same time, there's only so much you can prepare for without wasting money and space in your home. And also, do you really want to live through an apocalypse? I don't. I certainly don't. There is that. So I wish that people would, stop thinking that there was never going to be enough, and that they have to, buy it and hoard it. But we can only do so much to help people, and they have to really want to help themselves. I had a client this morning that was scheduled for me to start a project next week, and she's like, I'm not ready. And I said, well, I understand, but what do you think you need to do to be ready? What can I tell you? What can I ask you to maybe prepare you better? And some people will say, I may never be ready, and that's okay.
Wow. Yep.
Again, it's their journey and their stuff, and
Right.
I can only be there as the guide. I can't force them to throw anything out. I can't
The
force them.
sherpa, as you said.
Yeah, the Sherpa.
Yeah.
Nor do I want to force them to do anything. That's not my job.
Right.
That's really not my job. My job is to teach them that this is just, nobody needs this burden in their life. Nobody needs to carry these burdens forward. And yet here we are in 2024, 4 years after the pandemic, and I still walk into homes that have a lot of pandemic stuff.
Right. Well, Beth, to come full circle to something I said earlier is that this goes, what you do and how you help people certainly goes well beyond the physical
Yep.
clutter, right? And that is good that you kind of came full circle on that. And I want to thank you for your time and venturing on this, our first foray into live streaming and on YouTube. And I guess this is podcasting. I think we'll have to come up with a name for the Been There, Done That podcast, but I can't think of a better first guest for our first live stream than you. And thank you for being a customer of ours.
Right now?
What's that?
You're live streaming right now?
Well, that was the intent. We'll see if I actually did. I'm not actually on YouTube right now, but I've connected this studio to YouTube, so we'll see if it actually came through on YouTube. But this is, as I said, this is at least my first attempt at doing this. Okay. So it's pretty cool. And as I said, can't think of a better first guest. And thank you again for being a customer of ours. I will surely send my regards to Doug. And I asked you to continue trusting us, and we'll continue to trust you. And thank you for everything you do for your customers and for Been There, Done That even.
And thank you, because yeah. I can't speak for all of your franchises, but I know here in Boulder, they are so responsive and so timely. I've never had an issue with, them dropping off, picking up. It's just such a pleasure. It really is. And your price is always extremely competitive. So why wouldn't I continue to refer you?
That's great. Okay. Well, thanks again. Thanks. And all the best. Until next time. Okay. Bye. Thanks.